Hey everybody, and welcome to our newest project for first responder wellness, No One Fights Alone, an in-depth conversation about mental health and addiction in the first responder space. We're joined by your hosts Austin Pederson and Brad Shepard.
And we are back with another episode of No One Fights Alone, podcast surrounding first responder mental health and wellness. Super grateful to be here in 2023, continuing with this project. I have to say and give a shout out to all of the listeners, the people that have joined us on this journey through this podcast, and thank them for listening in. We hit a huge milestone the other day. We released this project August 1st, 2022, with no expectation at all. I'd been wanting to do this for over a year or two. I saw that there wasn't, there's some really good podcasts in this space, but I felt like maybe there was a spot for us there. And why I think that is just, I think that the people that I have surrounded myself with, and Chateau and the community, and the people in Utah have really embraced a different idea of healing for first responders, and we wanted to get that out. And personally, we started it in just this spare bedroom in my house with Josh, who all of you know was an integral part of season 1 of this podcast, and we just kind of shot from the hip. And like I said, we've just hit a milestone of 10,000 listens, and that is amazing. And I really am grateful for all of you, because without you listening in, without somebody from California, telling somebody from the East Coast, like, hey man, you gotta check out this Trevor guy, this Angry Viking therapist, or West Coast post trauma, or all of these other episodes that we made, it wouldn't do what it does, and that's spread the word of strength, of hope, of healing, of knowledge, right? And so in saying that, Josh was a great integral part of season 1. And what I want to do now is jump into the way that 2023 is going to look. And this year we are super excited to try and take this thing a little bit further than we had before, right? It was kind of a shoot from the hip thing, and we've developed a plan over the last little bit to really try and grow this and spread the word, get people on that have that experience and that strength and that hope and that knowledge surrounding first responders. And so season 2, is going to be co-hosted by a good friend and somebody that you guys have been introduced before, in Brad Shepard. Brad, for the listeners out there that didn't listen in on your episode, which I believe it was episode 3, give us a little background on you. Give us. I think this is going to be a cool episode to talk about, because you've been involved in wellness for a long time, right? Whether it's CISM or peer support or trainings or nonprofits or whatever it is, right? Give the listeners a little background of yourself and why you give a shit about this, and why this podcast was something that we wanted you and you wanted to be involved in.
Austin, thanks for having me on, and I absolutely am honored by the invitation to sit second chair with you in this journey, because I do have a passion for this, and it resonates back to really my core beliefs and upbringing within my family of serving outwardly, and that has continued to evolve itself even through my own journey of finding myself and actually looking to my own difficult paths and hurdles that I've undertaken and overcome, and really embraced the fact that hey, I'm sitting in this space, and the reality of sitting in this space is I get better when I help others get better, and offering just any facet of maybe a pat on the back or a high five or a hey, get up, you can keep going type conversation is something that I'm really interested in being part of. And having, I was really excited about doing the podcast when you first asked me back, gosh, I don't remember when that was. That was September. Yeah. And I had a great time. I got a little enthusiastic about it, and I think we ended up spending so much time, like time flew by before we even realized that we were having a good time.
Yeah, well, and then to jump into the episode that you did, and like I said, if you haven't listened, it's back in season 1, episode 3, I believe. But that was when we saw the impact of that episode, right? And you and I mean, I remember being at my sister's wedding, and you calling me and being like, "Hey, man, I'm getting text messages, I'm getting calls, like you've got some listeners in there," and I remember just being mind blown. Like, I'm like, dude, this is actually, I mean, these listeners, obviously we're centrally located in Utah. We do travel to do this podcast, depending, and things like that. But I remember, the listener that you had, I was like, hey, what area are they from? And, you said Washington, D.C. And I'm like, this little itty bitty, podcast that was thrown together by, two dudes who have no idea what they're doing is getting listened to across the country. And I thought in my head, I'm like, could this actually be a vehicle to help others realistically, right? That was always the goal, but I had no idea if we could do it.
For sure. I was actually amazed a little bit myself. I didn't really advertise it. I gave it to a few family members. I mean, California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, DC. I mean, it's actually amazing to me still that this, really, for lack of a better term, non-marketed podcast, in essence, is garnering such a strong download out here in the law enforcement, firefighter, paramedic, trauma nurse world of people looking for answers. And that's the other thing that excites me about being a part of this is the opportunity, having been a part of Chateau as a client and now being a part of Chateau, bringing quote unquote the Chateau experience to life for people, and really talking about things that we all maybe currently have or have had questions about. That those are stigmatized questions that if I ask, I'm asking for a friend. Those type of conversations really are not conversations being held enough out here. So I feel really passionate about the fact that we're going to sit here and offer up a Chateau experience to listeners out here and who may have themselves or in their bubble somebody that can say, you know what, there was a podcast that I would really like for you to listen to. It resonated with me. Maybe it'll resonate with you on taking a little different look at life and maybe a little bit different attitude about where you're at, and which is that's in small part of the theme of the Chateau experience.
Yeah, and I guess this is a time to, at least for those, to congratulate you on joining the team, and I'm super grateful for you being here at Chateau. I think this is going to be some fun stuff, right? Like, we get to open our minds and just kind of figure out what we want to do moving forward together and help those that are struggling. But, also at the same time, like, especially when we're jumping into, that Chateau experience and that Chateau talk, I've never said this before on the podcast, and we haven't really brought it up, and I think we've had some key guests come through that have gone through Chateau or worked at Chateau, and the reason we had them on was because of the experience and the thoughts and
right.
Their processes and all that thing. But our goal with this podcast has never been to sell beds.
Right.
Like, this is not a listen to how smart we are, listen to what we can do for you and change and come to our program, right? Yeah. Like that has never been my design. And I think maybe that's why it's done okay. I mean, it's branded towards such a small community that I never thought we would get 10,000 listens in 6 months.
I think that's amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing that you've got so many people out here pulling this up and saying, "I want to take this." And you're right. There's podcasts everywhere. I mean, the fact that you've got 10,000 people saying, "I choose you," is pretty amazing. Not because you do a poor job, but just because there's so many opportunities out there to take a listen somewhere. And I got to be honest, I choose my podcast pretty wisely because I am, fiercely guard my time. And we were just having this conversation about certain podcasts that are like 2 and 3 hours and 4 hours. I'm like, I can't get on board with some of those. But these podcasts that really, you can throw out, 30 minutes to an hour of information. I may be traveling for 45 minutes. And you know what? I'm going to pull Austin up and, let's give it a listen. And the No One Fights Alone podcasts have been absolutely amazing. You had some great guests on here. Yeah. The simple fact that you actually put people in a position to talk about relevant topics within the first responder culture, standalone is a great win because we need it. We need these first responders out here hearing, hey, there may be a different way to live. There may be a different, and none of those that I've heard have been about coming to this facility. Even though this facility is amazing, I absolutely love it. The staff's amazing. Over and over, that's why I'm here. That's why I said I want to be a part of this team. But the podcasts aren't about that. I feel like the podcasts are about how can we actually generate conversations out there towards talking about difficult topics.
Breaking the stigma. Yeah, breaking that stigma.
Yeah,
it's still there.
Items.
It's still there, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like, and you and I were talking about just bullshitting earlier about what we were going to do and, talking about how it's changed over the last couple of years. And that stigma is still there. Yes, it has changed, but, like, that's the goal, right? Is to just, like, someone from the own comfort of their house can listen about mental health and wellness and not have to go to their peer support the next day and say, I'm fucked up, right? Like, it just implants thoughts and,
sure.
Processes and all of that stuff. And that's the goal, right?
Well, I don't know that, I mean, this may be a clinician type answer, but I don't know that it ever goes away. I mean, you just keep funneling people into the system and recruiting people into these hero jobs, this, noble, courageous, and honorable endeavor of serving the communities that they're in. And when they do that, they're inherently, the hero complex comes to bear, and actually look in the mirror and say, maybe I'm not as tough as I thought I was, or maybe I've got, why did that affect me so bad? Why am I crying right now? Those type of questions. I remember asking myself a couple of those early on in my career of saying, I don't know what's happening to me right now, but I'm not down with this. Like I've got to do something different.
Well, I think that's ultimately the segue of, like what I really wanted to talk about in the first episode of 2023 is just how, like, grateful I really am for the people that we have brought on and the response that we've had. And if those guys that have been on, guys and gals that have been on and are listening in, I want to say thank you to you and thank you for the message that you spread. I mean, I brought it up earlier, but our number one most talked about episode has been Trevor's. Trevor Wilkins, the Angry Viking Therapist. Look him up on Facebook, social media, whatever it may be. But, I mean, not only from a standpoint of, people like you and me, right, that are sitting there going like, okay, I kind of understand this, and I think I have a pretty good viewpoint, but this guy knows his shit. To, people throughout the country that are like, oh, shit, that's me. Like, that all just, like, this light bulb went off, and you've heard it firsthand.
And he just broke it down on such a simple level. He made it... I've heard people talk about trauma on a level where it made sense, but he just made it real. He just made it like it's just a part of the conversation. It's not a topic that PhDs and clinicians are the only ones that know how to talk about. He made it so ordinary that we can actually have these conversations, and I believe that has a large part to do why it was so successful, because people can actually listen to that and then have conversations about, hey man, this isn't clinical. It's like real life now.
Yeah, well, but also the clinical part that he talked about. He didn't use these crazy big fancy words. He didn't try and overdose somebody on his intelligence.
Yeah.
Right. He made it so that you and I, the everyday citizen or the everyday first responder, can be like, oh, like why has it never been
For sure.
told to me like that before?
Right.
And allowed people, and this is what I've heard coming out of other people's mouths, is it allows people to forgive themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, wait, maybe this is why I've made some of the decisions I've made, or even made some of the mistakes that I've made. Like, from a limbic system standpoint, I was not functioning correctly.
Right.
Oh. I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
I don't have to know how an air conditioner works to know that I can get cooled off by the air conditioner by turning it on. You don't. Trevor's content was that you don't have to fully understand how trauma works to understand that trauma works within you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot of the beauty of his. I mean, that dude's a smart dude.
Absolutely.
And he what's real about him, and he was one of us, right? He was a Kentucky State Trooper. He was a police officer. I actually started there in Oklahoma, Austin, right there in little old Podunk, Oklahoma, and transitioned into some really hard times. And he went digging in, trying to figure it out. And that's the beauty of his understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's supposed to be, right? Is that those that have experienced something similar to those that are listening is where you connect with people and you gain a level of trust or understanding or whatever it may be. And so that's like the stuff that we want to continue to bring to people, this year on a different level. And I don't know what that looks like exactly. Super grateful to have Brad on and go through that. But I still want to give another shout out for another episode that we have, the Indianapolis Police Department episode with Nicole Jude. It's crazy how that specific episode actually helped another major department in the country build their peer support. And so they were lacking a little bit behind, and I'm obviously not going to mention names because I don't want to put that out there but they listened to that podcast, they reached out to me directly and then asked for her phone number. And that was the beginning of that department building a different kind of peer support team. I think it was always existing, right? Mm-hmm. But they realized what other places are doing and instilled that in their program.
Yeah, that's a pretty common theme within the culture of just, hey, what's happening out there? And that's the excitement of this podcast, which is just having conversations that allows people to say, hey, there's something different going on. What are they doing different that maybe could impact my department? So yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, like that also was another one of those where I'm like, God, man, is this thing doing what it's supposed to do? Like, I was a little freaked out by it. And then obviously, of course, like I always deal with my own shit. My own anxiety pops up of like, oh boy, like I better start doing a better job with this and continue to build it and do what it needs to do. Because if that conversation right there of that person calling me and then speaking with IMPD goes into, I mean, it's a trickle-down effect, right?
Right.
And so ultimately, if they instill some of those things that department is doing, that's saving someone's life.
Absolutely.
Right? Indirectly, but, like, it matters.
Absolutely.
And that's where my head goes. I'm like, oh, shit, this is now, there's some responsibility behind this now.
Right. Well, and I think you're doing a great job with this because you're looking at this from a altruistic standpoint of just, hey, let's see if we can affect some change out there. Let's see if we can impact some folks out there to the better, and bring an awareness to some really hard topics. Your selection of folks that you've had on the podcast to date has just been absolutely wonderful, and a lot of thanks. I'll speak on behalf of the listeners to you, Austin. Is thanks for even doing this. This is a great. This is a great endeavor that you've undertaken to just really have conversations of hard topics. So on behalf of the listeners, thanks for doing it.
Yeah. Well, now the pressure's on you too, my friend. So
I'm just sitting over here in the second chair, buddy.
yeah, no, not for much longer. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. I think that the exciting thing about having you on for the second season as the co-chair is just a completely different perspective, right? Like from a different part of the country. You got a face for radio, a beautiful. No, you got a good voice to hit with a different type of person too as well, and sometimes accents are a bonding point for someone, right? Like
I got that Okie accent.
Yeah, which I happen to enjoy, right? I can edit yours, but as soon as my voice comes on, it's tough for me. But you bring a different perspective, and I'm excited. Who knows how far it goes? Like we are switching up our platform after this to a remote podcast so that we can bring people across the country. And I mean, I've had tons of conversations with you moving forward on this, but I'm excited with the people that on a national level that can come in here and do exactly what the Trevors did and the IMPDs did and the West Coast Post Traumas did, and bring in a completely different view or standard or whatever it may be.
The awesome and sometimes unsettling reality of working in this industry is that there's always a new person that has had a really, really crazy story that can step up to the mic and say, let me tell you what happened last week. Because, life, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's still people out there serving this community as the firefighters and the trauma nurses and the law enforcement officers. They're still out there working every day, and crazy things are happening to them. And there's always the next person that we can look at and say, hey, tell us your story. Tell us how you, tell us what happened to you. Tell us where you went, and then tell us how you got out of there. What was the dark days, and tell us what kept you going and why. That's really actually a fascinating part of me. I love sitting and listening to someone's story. Not that this doesn't have anything to do with this podcast. I just feel really grateful to get to be a part of this. But to sit and have the honor of actually someone download their entire journey of pain and suffering and darkness and say, this is what I did, or sometimes this is, I don't know how to get out of this. And you actually give them this lamp of saying, let me help you.
Yeah.
And in a small part, I feel like that's a little bit of what starts the question of hope for maybe some of those people out there listening.
Absolutely. I think that, if somebody leaves with nothing but an ounce of hope after listening to an episode, it's a major victory, right? Because you're absolutely right on the fact that every single day you're watching the news and you're hearing the stories of horrendous or beautiful things, right? Right?
For sure,
Like there are definitely two paths. I don't want to stick on a negative side or a positive side, because sometimes each one plays off of each other, quite a little bit. But there's a never-ending story of people, sacrificing and putting their lives on the line to save others or help others or whatever it is, help themselves too, as a matter of fact. And we don't, if you watch the news these days, it seems to be pretty damn negative.
It's pretty negative.
Yeah.
I rarely watch the news anymore, Austin. I just I'll catch the highlights, themology. There's a couple of podcasts that I listen to that really catch me up thematically on what's happening. But it's just it. Of course, too, part of it is just the trauma journey of saying, you know what, I don't have to listen to that. But for kind of back to your theme of a little bit of kind of that portion of the conversation, I think it's, for me, it's really important that that the reason I like the opportunity to be a part of this is this no one fights alone concept of because I remember being in that place thinking I'm fighting these demons on my own. I'm the only one in it. Nobody understands me, and I will I will never forget the first time I heard a guy talk that was, I'm like, you get me. And I think thematically, this, even the title of this podcast and carrying over into, how you allow people to actually unpack and unload their stories really has a large part to do with, hey, you're not alone out there. And if you think you are, give a listen to some of this, because you're not. There are people who have been down the journey that you've been down.
Absolutely. And that's the goal, is that, with each individual guest or each individual podcast, we put that opportunity out there to connect to it.
Sure.
And in whatever way it is. And, I'm looking forward to the next year, and what that looks like, for this, and, for the future of wellness in general. I mean, just, you see a lot more people, and I think that's, you get to speak on this too as well, but I mean, it's changed. It's still definitely a portion that is stigmatized to it, but more and more often you're finding first responders seeking help.
That's a great point. The leadership across our country have embraced, in varying degrees. There are some, you still hear prevalent issues of administrative betrayal and those types of topics. But thematically, again, this viewpoint of stigma is changing a little bit to, okay, I welcome this conversation. Peer support teams standing up all over the country, chiefs, IECP, on law enforcement community, IECP embracing the fact that, hey, if you want to help keep those officers healthy, stand up a peer support team. These different IAFF in the firefighter community. These entities across the country are helping reestablish this culture of embracing mental, emotional health issues and these dimensions of wellness, saying, hey, we want our servants, our heroes out there, we want them healthy. We want them having not just healthy careers, but healthy home lives, healthy relationships outside of work, healthy, spiritual and physical and nutritional lives. These are all conversation pieces now that they weren't being had when you don't even want to know what I was told when I first got on about how to deal with stress. It was an absolute jaw dropper of how to deal with stress.
Now you got to tell us.
It was go find another girlfriend.
Oh.
Yeah, like that's going to de-stress your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an exact quote from my first supervisor in FTO.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Healthy, right?
It was the culture at the time.
Yeah. And what year was that?
That was 1992.
Okay. So things have drastically changed. I hope they don't.
A little bit.
I hope they don't. They may, depending on the area, that still might be.
It still could be conversations being had.
Yeah.
However, in the meantime, a lot of these things are changing to say, hey, the complexity of what we know about wellness and health, those are not good conversations to have. We need to have conversations about, is your spiritual life intact? Is your nutritional life intact? Is your your home life, your sex life? Those types of conversations that oftentimes are really hard conversations to have.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that.
But people are being open to them.
They are. Right.
Bosses.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's because they know that's how they're going to end up keeping their people. I mean, like I for the first time was involved in a conversation with somebody where, when they were in the hiring, they were looking obviously to hire. Everyone's understaffed. Every city's understaffed. Everything, and they actually got asked the question of, well, what does your wellness program look like? And that was a determining factor of if they were to. I mean, the guy was obviously qualified to be an officer there. Like, that's the bottom line, right? Like, he kind of holds their balls in his hand.
Sure.
When it comes to, I can choose to be with you guys, or take it or leave it. And having the wellness program was a determining factor for him, saying, all right, I'll sign on with you. Like, let's do this.
Smart guy.
Yeah, but that's the first time I've ever heard of it, right? Yeah. And I mean, you talk to chiefs and people across the country, and
man, I was 23 and just lucky to have a job. I didn't have any idea what kind of conversations those were. That was just I was just lucky to. Oh, you're going to hire me to go drive fast, and
Yeah.
I'm in.
Well, and so that's part of this episode that I want to get into right here, and I hope you're okay with it. And it may be a slight blindside, but we've had you on, we've heard your story, but I want to hear like from your mouth why you decided to become a police officer. I think we kind of left that part out. Like we talked about a lot about your pain and struggle, which I also respect you a ton for what you've been through and what you've overcome. But like, what was your thought process in becoming a cop and choosing that as a career for yourself?
I grew up a farm kid in western Oklahoma. I absolutely loved farming, ranching with my dad. I still absolutely love my upbringing. I was fortunate to be raised by some absolutely wonderful family. They're amazing humans in an environment that was really, really healthy. And when I went off to college, to back up, I had every intention of going back and just being a farmer rancher, cutting wheat for the rest of my life. And when I went off to college, it didn't take very long to figure out that was not going to mesh with actually, part of my goal was being married, raising a family, and it was hard enough. It's rough. It's hard. Kudos to any of I absolutely love farming ranchers today. It's tough out there. And I realized real quickly that was not going to be my journey in life. And I started looking around. My dad said, exact quote, "Sounds to me like you need to get on your knees and find out where you're going." So the short version of that is I ended up looking at law enforcement and got hired on by the Oklahoma Highway Patrol when I was 23 years old. I was trying to finish up college. And the humorous part of that was they were taking 32 folks into their academy in 1992. I think they had about 3,500 applicants, which most agencies would slobber over that type of recruitment process today. But they were out of over 3,000, they were going to select 32, and I got a letter saying, "Hey, you were not selected." And then they expanded the 32 to 36, and then I got another letter. So I actually have two letters for the same patrol school. One says you didn't make it, and the other one says you did. So now let's not get too crazy about that, because the reality is I was at the bottom of the barrel.
So you're saying you're 36? Is that? I'm thinking you're 33. I don't.
That's being really optimistic. I want to believe I was 33. I was probably 36. You know what? You didn't have to tell me to be grateful for that, because I came out of there absolutely loving life. Had a great career. My first 3 years were in Eastern Oklahoma. I moved back to Central Oklahoma. Spent the remainder of my career in a suburb of Oklahoma City. And I just feel blessed throughout my career. Now, did it have a lot of trials, tribulations, and trauma with it? Absolutely, which is why I do what I do today. But 25 years, 8 months, 3 days, and 6.5 hours with an agency that I absolutely still to this day love. Do they have their issues? Yes, but you're not going to find a governmental agency out there that's perfect. Yeah. You're just not going to find it because there's people within. That's the inherent dilemma or hurdle or burden sometimes with agencies, is because they're ran by humans, and humans have faults and in varying degrees. I had some great leaders. I had some poor leaders. The great leaders I tried to learn from. The poor leaders I tried to torment as best I could. So
people make mistakes.
People make mistakes. I got to be a part of some really cool things. Our tactical unit. I was a part of our tactical unit. Our honor guard. I used to serve as an honor guard with funerals, line of duty death funerals. I was a part of Homeland Security. I was part of our special operations unit. I never said no to anything. Now, I wasn't a perfect employee. I got kicked out of a couple of those units because, I can go back and look and say that was directly related to trauma. Mm-hmm. But most of that time, I really did have a ball. And the best part of that journey was some of the partners and relationships that I built through the course of it. I often say, I stole this, but I've heard this said a couple of times. People say, "Do you miss it?" And you say, I miss the circus. I don't miss the clowns. I really do miss that. I retired in 2018, and I really do miss the people, the partners, and those relationships that you build in that time is those are friends for life, really.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you I heard you comment today, trauma relationship. You
Trauma bonded.
trauma bonded.
Yeah.
A lot of this is this trauma bond journey that you go through absolutely crazy, mind-blowing stuff that the normal public, the average citizen, just has no fathom of. And
They don't want to fathom it either, though.
no, I don't want to speak for them. I would venture a guess that most of them say that's why we hire a police officer. That's why we have deputies. That's why we have firefighters, is because I don't want to deal with that. And I call you when I need you. And when I need you, I want you to show up quickly, take care of the problem so I can go back to baking my cake and mowing my lawn.
Yeah.
So I had I feel like I had a blessed career. I think through the course of my career, I had some trauma attached to me, and I had several losses. Not really going back down the podcast road that I was on, but a variety of losses led me to really a place in my life that I didn't have answers for, and the hypocrisy of my journey is that I worked in a lot of this wellness industry through the latter part of my career. I was on our peer support team. I actually led our peer support team. I taught wellness. I taught a variety of wellness all throughout the United States. I worked in the industry post-retirement. I worked in that wellness community, which is how you and I met. And then a variety of things that happened in my life just led me down to overload, to where I can no longer exist in the current method and manner of life to which I'm living. I got to figure out a different way to live, which is why I'm so grateful for Chateau. Chateau is just the beginning of changing my mindset, changing my philosophical and worldview, my spiritual view. And I'm deeply grateful for the Chateau experience in the short time that I was here, and still to this day am on this. I feel like probably will be a forever endeavor of just living a life of gratitude and utilizing this change, this experience, this new way of looking at something different. I just wasn't prepared for. I didn't have the skills or tools to empty the bucket. I thought I did. I was able to empty that bucket a little bit, but there was some, just some external things that my internal heart and mindset were not prepared for.
No, absolutely. But that's why I think you bring a really integral part of the future of this podcast together, is having that experience, that knowledge, everything that you just spoke about. You've walked through, many, many different things. And when we, move forward with these guests and these things, it's just an opportunity for you to speak on a different level with them, right? That's something I'm really looking forward to. And we all have our, I think it's important for us to all have our qualifiers to be a part of this, journey for everybody, right? But I think ultimately it's about where it comes from in the heart, and to that, and I have to ask you that question. I mean, in your heart, was part of the reason you wanted to do this was to help people?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just this podcast and not wellness. I'm just talking to be an officer in general.
I absolutely would. I relish the opportunity. Not only am I excited about this, but even further, I would say I am grateful for the opportunity that if something that I can offer up or instigate in a conversation or actually verbalize myself that can really get a first responder out there asking an internal question, man, what a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. And that's, I mean, that is where I want to wrap up our first episode, because I think, what we have moving forward now is, like a little bit of a direction for you and I to explore. And, our next guest will be, Lou. And Lou is a former military guy himself.
Special operations.
Special operations.
It's a badass.
Right.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking forward to speaking with him, talking about his journey and where he's at in his life. And, then we'll keep moving forward from there, and hopefully have a new episode for you guys, every week or every other week, or, like, obviously we both, this is our passion project. And so we want to do this as best we can, but we're also not going to put out episodes just to put them out. Like,
did you sign me up for podcast school? Is that what's that about?
If it exists, I need to go, because obviously there's some work that needs to be done appropriately. But yeah, that's what it is, man. I think, right? Like, that's our journey.
What's great about this is that I don't think anybody really expects you to be experts at this. You don't get 10,000 downloads from people thinking, oh yeah, Austin Pederson's the guru on podcasts. They download that because maybe you're offering something up that is relevant to my life.
Besides the few people that have reached out to us directly about the podcast, I mean, shit, those other 9,000 downloads could have been my mom. Just trying to make me feel better and say you're doing something good, right? Like, that's a definite possibility. So, I mean,
so the 99 people that are out there listening, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We appreciate every minute and that you listen in and join us on this journey. Mom, if you're listening too, thanks,
Mom,
for the 9,000 downloads. But anyways, we will be back hopefully in the next week or two with you guys, and over the next year. Like, whatever that looks like, I'm hoping to get some pretty cool guests at the FOP Wellness Conference over in Nashville. Maybe try and steal someone and grab them for a few minutes. Really looking forward to that.
That's honest. That's right around the corner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we don't have a plan for anybody, but I have a feeling we're going to run into someone and just force them to sit down with us.
There's some cool humans going to be walking around that place.
Oh, absolutely. Just absolutely shame them into doing it, give them the opportunity. But you know how many people you could help right now by doing this, and just shame them into sitting down with us. But anyways, thank you, everyone. Like I said, we really appreciate every single person that takes the time and listens in on this. And anything you want to say to the listeners as we head out, Brad?
I'm just grateful to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, Austin, you and the listeners. Thank you for the opportunity to just share some of my life with you, and hopefully vice versa. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this segment of No One Fights Alone. We want to give a special shout out to our sponsors of this episode, Chateau Recovery and First Responder Trauma Counselors. Chateau Recovery is a 16-bed treatment facility nestled in the foothills of the Wasatch Mountains in Midway, Utah. Chateau's First Responder Resiliency Program is designed to treat the unique challenges and issues that first responders encounter in the course of their careers. Chateau's comprehensive and individualized approach to treatment addresses more than just the presenting issues, it addresses the why. Each of their trauma-trained and culturally competent therapists utilize evidence-based therapies to treat trauma at its core and enable clients to begin the healing process while developing a resilient and healthy relationship with stress. Chateau Recovery is trusted by departments and agencies from around the county to treat responders and veterans. In fact, it is one of only a handful of facilities nationwide that is vetted and approved to treat members of the Fraternal Order of Police. For more information, or to speak to a representative, go to chateaurecovery.com or call 888-507-5031. First Responder Trauma Counselors are subject matter experts in proactive behavioral health care for frontline workers through their National Peer Support Academy. This 40-hour, all badges, all uniforms, all scrubs, educational experience helps you create caring, honest, and empathetic peer support relationships with your fellow frontline workers. FRTC's National Peer Support Academy is taught by actual first responders who have gone back to school to become culturally competent licensed behavioral health clinicians, who teach from lived experience, not just theories from books. This fast-paced, immersive, educational academy will not just change your life, it will help you save the lives of others. For additional details, go to their website 911overwatch.org or contact First Responder Trauma Counselors at 970-222-4193. This could be the most life-changing academy you'll ever attend.